Hey guys, this is Phil the MMA Dude, back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 17, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. But that's not all, folks. That is not all. We have got today the first ever guest in Split Decision Podcast history. One of the greatest jiu-jitsu fighters on the planet, a 5-time Eddie Bravo Invitational champion. He's undefeated in MMA. I'm talking about the Lion Killer, folks, Garry Tonon. Gary, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. You made me sound like way cooler than I actually think I am, so I like that. That's nice.
Oh, I think you're plenty cool. I think you're plenty cool, bro. But no, so happy to have you on.
Do me a favor. Is there any chance, like, obviously after this fight, but like, you know, sometime in the next couple weeks, you could just come into like the local bar next to my house and announce me the same way?
It would be my honor. Just
what we can do is just loop it, and I can send you the MP3, and you can just make it.
No. It's got to be in person. It's got to be in person, right, Gary? Okay. Gary, let me ask you this first question right off the bat here. So I know you spoke recently to the Body Lock MMA about how you'll be changing your mentality for this approach to the upcoming fight against Anthony Engelin. I know that he's primarily known for his kickboxing and specifically his knockout power. So how are you and your coach, John, approaching this fight differently?
So overall, I say this in most of my interviews, that at this point in my career, we're not doing a crazy amount of specific work for fights. Obviously, not to be naive, I mean, I watched some of his fights, and so did John, before we signed the deal, just to see what we were dealing with. But I just watched another couple of his fights the other day. The only thing that I really have been focusing on more than anything else is just getting sparring partners in that throw more kicks, just to get my body in tune with the habits that are required to deal with that. Whether it be catching kicks, whether it be countering, whether it be throwing my own, checking, whatever it is. So the main thing for me was just making sure that I build habits leading into this fight that are conducive to a guy that's going to be throwing a little bit more kicks that's a kickboxer. Other than that, I wouldn't say that I drastically changed my strategy in camp or sparring or anything. The adjustments that I made in sparring were adjustments to make me better as a whole in MMA. Those adjustments weren't necessarily for him specifically, but I will say that I've been watching a lot of really good grapplers that have transitioned to mixed martial arts, and I plan to follow a similar strategic method that they did when they dealt with kickboxers. For instance, you could take Khabib, for example, against I'm dropping the name for a second. He's actually on my team. Against Edson. You take a guy like that. Like, Edson's super, super dangerous. I think Edson's a little bit more dangerous than my current opponent, and as far as kicking is concerned, I don't think anybody would argue that. Khabib is not any particular force to be reckoned with on the feet in terms of striking, just by itself anyway. But he does a really good job of committing to threatening the takedown and coming back up for strikes and continuing to move forward and aggressively pinning his training partner or pinning his opponent against the fence to take him down and control.
Did we lose him?
Did we lose him for a second? Oh, you're back, Gary.
We're good. I was called during the middle. I don't know how to stop that from happening.
No worries.
All good.
Out later. Just keep rolling. So with that,
but I've been watching guys like that deal with other guys that are similar to my opponent, and that gives me some rough guidelines to work with. Is it going to be exactly like that? No, not necessarily. I think I always try to take the good parts of these guys, these great guys that I'm watching, and then take other good parts of other people, because I think that everybody has their flaws. I think if you ever try to just follow one guy's model, you'll only be a shittier version of that guy. It's very unlikely that you're somehow going to take whatever that dude did and do it better than he did by copying it, right? Like, you gotta take pieces from everybody.
So with that being said, who is your striking coach currently?
So currently, John runs both my striking and my grappling program. Basically, just systematically runs my my MMA training. And it kind of works something like this. Because somebody asked me the other day during an interview, they're like, why how is your striking so unorthodox, this, that, and the other thing? 2 reasons. One, because I suck. That's the first reason, oh, hey, why do you move so much? I remember somebody asked me, and I'm like, I have ADHD, dude. I can't help it. Like, I don't know what to do. So, that's part of the reason. Is just like, I think I'm a little bit more creative just because I'm just getting started. Like, I don't really know what I like yet, honestly. Yeah. I don't have a Garry Tonon doesn't have a striking game yet. A game, well, some people would interpret that differently. They're like, yeah, you suck. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like, I don't have
exactly
one methodology where I'm like, okay, I do this from southpaw, I do this from conventional. It changes, month by month as I'm training and getting better. But anyway, the structure, the way that we kind of do things is John will present me with ideas about how to get better. Maybe he sees that I haven't been throwing as many left hooks or they're not landing well. Or, for instance, my third fight, I'll give you a very easy example. I actually brought this one to John. And I said, John, I rewatched my third fight the other day. And every time I throw a right hand, not only is it not landing, that's not that big of a deal. You can fix that. But when it's not landing, I just stay still and put my hands up. And it's not bad. Putting your hands up is okay, but moving and not getting hit at all might be a better option. So, fix that fairly quickly. And he sent me a little video of Mayweather landing right hands. And almost every time Mayweather lands that rear hand, okay, he moves his head once or twice and he's safe from whatever the return fire is, right? So, in theory, that's kind of how our whole system works here, okay? He presents me with ideas after he watches my sparring for how I can get better. I watch somebody who's the best in the world at it. I get some ideas from them, and then I implement it, with little bits and pieces of my game to try to make it my own. Nice. So John's my striking coach, but also I kind of look at all these other great talented athletes that I'm modeling my striking after as my coaches as well, because they're the ones that I'm watching do these excellent maneuvers.
Awesome. And for those that don't know, of course, his coach is John Danaher, who's coached the likes of George St. Pierre, Chris Weidman, Rory McDonald. Switching gears for a quick second, Garry, I am a very big fan of nicknames, and the Lion Killer is one of my favorite. I'd love to know how you got that nickname.
I wish there was a better story, but basically, like, rear naked choke is Mata Leon in Portuguese, which means lion killer for whatever reason, which is a way cooler way to say it. The Americans really screwed up with the whole rear naked choke. It's a little like our sport already, like a little homoerotic enough. Like, we're already getting like rear naked choke. Like, it's like nobody put any thought into that. Like, and it was even back then too. People were like competing in sungas and shit. Like how do you say, like, lion killer just sounds so much better. But anyway, that's what they call it in Portuguese. And because of that, I had mentioned that to some of my students back when I used to teach at Tom's and stuff. And I was just hitting rear naked chokes a lot. And, because of that, we played around with the idea of, me being the lion killer, quote unquote. And eventually I just branded myself like that via social media. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like I ever had a crowd chanting lion killer over and over again or anything like that. Or I went.
Hey, it could happen. It's going to happen in the future. It's going to happen.
Some beautiful creature, but.
Nice. Well, that kind of leads us into one of our listener questions, so we'll start knocking those out. What we got here. Quinn, one of our regular listeners at Orthodox1993, wants to know, what is Garry's favorite submission? So go ahead, Garry.
Yeah, man, I always kind of have to go back to the rear naked choke. I think it's my favorite submission because it's just so absolute. When you get it's positional dominance combined with submission dominance. And what I mean by that is even if I'm not finishing the rear naked choke, in order to get to a place where you could hit it, you're already in like complete dominance of the opponent. So it's like the fight's already over in that position. That's why I'm such a big fan of getting there. That's why the first 6 years of my training was pretty much spent around finding ways to get to people's backs and strangling them. And when I met John, I learned how to submit people in other ways. But that's always going to be a hometown favorite for me. I would say that recently, before MMA, most of my recent victories were probably leg lock victories, but I had a lot of other things peppered in there too. I love front headlock and guillotine attacks as well. But if I have to pick a winner, it's going to be rear naked choke every time.
Nice.
I like it. Okay, so another listener question is from Paulo Kelly at Sparks F1. Best MMA fight you've ever seen, Gary. What is it?
That's an interesting question. It's going to take me a second to really think about that.
That is a tough one.
Because guys have to understand that when I'm thinking about this, my perspective is probably skewed compared to the average fan that would watch. Because when I watch MMA now, I don't really watch as a fan. I watch as like a student of MMA. Like when I'm watching these fights, I'm like watching a fight and I'm like, all right, what can I learn from these guys? You know, so man, that's really tough. You know, what was one that I really liked? Damn, man. You know, I would say this is going to be super biased, and it's not necessarily because visually it was necessarily the best fight I ever saw. It was definitely up there, but it was because I was a part of it. So I'm going to be super biased, whatever, who cares, but Nick Diaz versus GSP, because that was the first camp for mixed martial arts I was ever involved with. John brought me down to Montreal once a week to help train with George, and I got to watch the things that John was coaching George on, and then I got to watch George like literally implement almost every single thing that I saw John teach, and it was just amazing to watch for me. And obviously that's like a little different than the average fan perspective because they didn't have that background going into that fight. So for them, I think a lot of people didn't like that fight for whatever reason. I think because it took place on the ground a lot, which screw everybody that doesn't like the ground. But that's pretty much. I mean, I thought it was really really cool because I mean Nick's supposed to be really good on the ground, and George did an excellent job of putting him on the ground and being really dangerous from there and warding off any of Nick's attacks that he had. And I just thought it was a really a beautiful tactical performance on George's part. So I'm gonna say that's my favorite one. But there may be a better answer to that question. I just spur of the moment without pausing for 30 minutes to think about it. That's what I'm gonna tell you.
Hey,
I love it.
A hell of a fight, man. I'm the resident Diaz nerd here, so yeah, it didn't quite go his way, but I just think the two personalities with the auras around them, and like you said, GSP executing a game plan to a T was really kind of what he was about. So that's a great fight. So I got another one lined up here. It's from Underground Town at Tons of Buns. He says,
Best
have you
name
had
ever.
any random thoughts pass through your head in the middle of an MMA fight, or I'll even say a jiu-jitsu match?
Absolutely, yeah. So probably I had, because I saw somebody post this beforehand, so I got a little inside scoop. I didn't read all of them, but I always go through my Twitter feed and like my comments and stuff. So I saw that one and I was like, oh man, something came to my head right away, and that was during my second fight with Rahul Raju. And I don't know if it was necessarily during the fight or if it was like an afterthought, because I remember I was being interviewed and I said it in the interview. But after that fight, I was just like, this should be illegal. Like, this is just not okay. Like, this is so scary. Like, why do people let people do this? Like, I obviously, I'm there, and I had a third fight, so I obviously wanted to keep fighting. But it's just, I don't know. It was a different challenge. My first fight, I would say, was fairly one-sided. I got hit with a couple punches, but the second fight, Raju definitely tagged me a few times coming in, and it was just a different feeling. He's pretty heavy too, and yeah, man, I felt the real, and I went to the third round with him too, so I felt a real sense of urgency to have to finish the guy too, and it just. I was so overwhelmed with kind of emotion at that moment that, I was just like, this is too crazy. Like, this just shouldn't be okay. Like, I don't know. Even though I was in there, I'm like, oh man, this should be illegal.
That is crazy. It's kind of what I thought when I watched Masvidal Till last weekend. I was like, man.
Oh yeah.
That was a crazy one.
Okay, Gary, I've got a question for you. So, as I'm sure you know, two of your rivals from your days competing in BJJ, Crone Gracie and Dylan Dennis, have recently started to make their own waves in the sport of mixed martial arts. If you could only choose one of those two, which guy would you prefer to meet inside an MMA cage?
Definitely have to be Crone for multiple reasons. One, I believe I just think I have more history with Crone in the sense that, from my perspective, I guess, in the sense that I lost to Crone as opposed to Dylan. I beat him 2 times. So I'm sure he feels the rivalry, but like for me, I'm not opposed to fighting the guy or to having another grappling match with him by all means. I'm just saying that like it's not weight on my shoulders, right? Like me losing to Crone, it's like, oh man, this is a chance at potential redemption, right? To in the future potentially fight this guy or grapple him or whatever. So that's the main reason. But the other reason is I feel him to be more dangerous from a submission perspective. But they both have the ability to submit people. I think Dennis will be able to continue to submit a certain number of opponents, and we'll see where his development goes. Same with Crone. Like I think Crone's submission game is at a certain level where a lot of the guys that he gets put in the cage with, he's going to be able to find a way to submit regardless of taking damage or whatever the case may be. And then I'm interested to see how their development proceeds and what happens when they're put with somebody that makes it really difficult for them to bring things to the ground. I'm just be curious to see what happens there. But anyway, to answer the question flat out, Crone, 10 out of 10 times.
I want to piggyback on that. As you understanding jiu-jitsu the way you do, can you kind of explain the differences between Crone's jiu-jitsu and Dylan's jiu-jitsu, for instance? Because I think people hear a lot about great jiu-jitsu fighters, and it's kind of hard to quantify them and kind of figure out the different styles and techniques they use.
I would say Crone has a greater propensity to do a few things. Get to the back, for sure. He has a better jujigatame. He's got a better armbar. The guillotine, his guillotine, I don't know. I think that's probably fairly even between him and Dennis. It's hard to say. I think him and Dennis both have good guillotine attacks, or at least some form of front headlock attack. And then as far as Crone and legs are concerned, I don't really think he has much of a leg game where Dylan does. But you see, I don't really factor that into the equation because I have a really good leg game, so it's not really something I think about.
Right.
But anyway, those would be the main differences between the two. I guess I just think that Crone has a better ability to get to the back and finish from the back. That's just my personal opinion. Do I have empirical evidence of that? Maybe. I'd have to go back and look to see for sure, but I think so. I mean, Crone hasn't competed in jiu-jitsu in a while, so it's kind of hard for me to say for sure, but that's the way that I see it. Also, again, keep in mind, I mean, when I fought Crone, I just got my black belt. I was a little bit more experienced when I fought Dylan. So my perspective of his skill level when I had just gotten my black belt and maybe my perspective of his skill level now or when I fought Dylan would be different, right? It's obviously not this drastic, but if you put a blue belt around your waist and then you go to train with a brown belt or you train with a black belt, depending upon their relative levels, you may not notice the difference. You may not even notice the difference between a purple belt or a black belt. If they weren't wearing it, you may not really know. You're probably going to get submitted regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really tell that level difference. So I may be at a skewed perspective, but I just think that Crone's better at at least getting to the back and finishing. That's just yes,
absolutely.
Great breakdown. Thanks, man.
I agree. And just to piggyback off that piggyback, if that's even physically possible, let's assume it is. Our good friend Sam, the listener's got a question related to that. That's at Sam, MMA Fan Bronx. He says, if you fought Dylan Dennis in MMA, would you prefer to tap him out or knock him out?
Interesting question. Well, I've submitted him before, so I guess I would prefer to knock him out.
I love it.
My strategy when it comes to the standing position is not so much like I don't like swing for the fences per se. I mean, we have things that we practice to try to get better at, like potentially knocking someone out. Don't get me wrong, but it would be more along the lines of I just try to keep things on the feet and see where things go. But I've also been doing jiu-jitsu for over a decade, so it'd be more than likely he's going to be desperately trying to get things to the ground, and I would probably end up having to submit him because it would be difficult to just keep getting things back to the feet. So, but if I had my choice, I'd prefer to knock him out for sure.
Awesome.
So coming from a jiu-jitsu background, I'm kind of going to use the reference like athletes always want to be entertainers and entertainers always want to be athletes kind of deal. Is it like one of those things where once you come to MMA, you're kind of searching for that knockout, or you're kind of visualizing yourself as a striker because kind of the jiu-jitsu is already there, or is it something you just always know you have and can go to at any time?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like more of a muscle memory thing, right? Like it's just like, okay, you get up in the morning and you do a particular behavior over and over and over and over again. And I haven't stopped training jiu-jitsu, and like I haven't stopped training jiu-jitsu any more or less than I was when I was competing in jiu-jitsu. Like I still train exactly the same amount of times per day. I haven't eliminated any jiu-jitsu sessions to make room for MMA. I just added the MMA on in a way, which I didn't even realize was possible in the schedule that I already had. But yeah, so honestly, like it's not like I'm losing any amount of that grappling. So yeah, when you get in that fight scenario, like there's a certain amount of me that's always gonna like gear towards like trying to submit a guy. I remember my second fight, I went for a triangle at one point while I was on top and mount. And John was like, "What the fuck was that, man? Why'd you do that?" He's like, "You could have just punched his face in. There's really no reason to jump for fall back for a triangle. Like that was just taking an unnecessary risk." And I have to agree, but again, it's like, dude, I do this twice a day, every day, and that's usually what I would do in that situation, right? So it's hard to get away from that. But from the other perspective, like I do want to test myself. I want to make sure that those skills are there so that when I need them, I'm not lost. Like I don't want the first time I have to use striking to be against some amazing striker, right? Like I want to test myself against everybody and then work my way up. And then when I get to that situation, it won't be the first time that I ever had to try to punch somebody in the face.
Yeah. With that being said, I think it's clear that your next opponent is going to be your most dangerous opponent as far as a striker, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it is kind of one of those situations where I'm happy that my last 3 fights, like I played around on the feet, right? Like, okay, I could be going into this 4th fight against somebody who's a highly specialized striker, and I could have spent my last 3 fights immediately going in for the takedown and submitting the guys in the first round, right? I could have tried to do that. I'm not saying I necessarily would have. I'm not trying to talk shit. But I'm just saying I could have tried to do that. And then by the time I got to this 4th fight, where I have some dude who's clearly capable of knocking me out, now it's like, oh, now I might have to strike, right? Like it's that's a bad situation. Like it's not something that I want. I want to try it out beforehand. Let's get that sorted early. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Is there any part of you, in the early part of your career, I know like every fight's a fight and there's obviously the ability to lose every fight, but as you're building, is there any part of you or your team that wants more of you on tape to give other fighters something to think about? Or, because you're rapidly changing with your striking style and kind of your skills. You said you're just kind of learning and adding. So the more they're studying kind of the old you, because this is a fast progression, correct?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't think they're going to be able to do. I'm sure there's going to be certain things that I'll keep consistent, throughout some of my fights. I think it's inevitable that you'll fall into certain patterns. It's going to be real tough, though. It was tough to do that in my jiu-jitsu, and I did that for over 10 years, and it was pretty tough for people to predict patterns. I was pretty unpredictable when it came to jiu-jitsu, top, bottom, taking people down, playing off my back, going for leg locks, going for the back. Like, I was just always a very versatile jiu-jitsu fighter, and I believe I will be the same in MMA. So I don't know if everybody's just ever going to see like, oh, this is his game plan. Where when you watch Damian Maia, like regardless of how educated you are about MMA, I think it's pretty clear if you watched even 2 or 3 of his fights, even one fight realistically, that there's a clear game plan in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
He's pretty much going to try to do the same thing to you overall. And I don't really think that people are going to get that kind of sense of security watching my fight footage.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got my last fan question here from listener Jim Asoon. That's at Jim _Asoon. Is One Championship planning any events in Canada in the foreseeable future that you know of?
Interesting. Don't know for sure, but there has been talk of bringing One Championship to North America, for sure. My guess would be the U.S. first. Is it possible that it would ever come to Canada? I definitely think so. I mean, consider the fact that they just had George St. Pierre teach a seminar up there, and they had him up there talking to Chatri, who runs the organization. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, who knows what that means? I haven't talked to George to ask him about it. Obviously, even if I did, like, I wouldn't be able to say anything about it probably. But I'm just saying, like, I mean, I don't see why not, other than the fact it's Canada. No, I'm kidding. But
Canada's pure warriors. Come on, Gary, pure warriors there.
I actually love Canada, to be honest. Montreal is amazing. I've been to Montreal, Vancouver. Both of those were awesome, and Montreal many times, obviously, because George's up there. And then I was at one other area. It's like somewhere in BC.
Toronto?
No, somewhere central. No, it's not super common. It's like a oil town or something like that. Or maybe sure.
Like the hockey team, the Oilers.
I don't know. Anyway,
we're incriminating ourselves here.
It's called Black Falls, maybe. So I don't know if anybody recognized it, but anyway, that was like kind of in the middle of nowhere. But that was cool too. I enjoyed it. It was peaceful. It was quiet. The only thing I don't like about Canada is how cold it is. That's terrifying.
Seriously, right?
Dude, in the winter.
Hey, I'm in Chicago right now, so please.
I'm in Arizona. It's 75 degrees out.
Pretty much the same.
Jersey's
so,
the same.
How does it feel fighting on a card that's debuting Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson, and has multiple title fights on it? I mean, this is arguably one of the biggest one cards ever, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's super exciting, especially like when you think about it from the perspective of it's the fourth fight of my career ever. Like, I had no amateur fights or anything like that. To be on a card with guys like that, I mean, that's special for sure. I don't think a lot of guys get an opportunity like that 4 fights into their careers. So, yeah, I'm taking this really, really seriously. I've been training. I'm easily more prepared for this fight than any fight that I've had prior. And I'm not just saying that from a perspective. Of course I am, because I'm obviously more experienced now. But I'm saying that from a perspective of actual just like output. I've been studying more. I've been working harder. I told you I added in some sessions with some of the Muay Thai team downstairs too. So I've really been as much extra as I could possibly put into this event. I have. So
I love it. Justin, you got any more questions, or because I got my big heavy hitter coming up. So do you have another question? Okay.
Boy.
So Gary, this is where it gets real serious. This is a very heavy question. It's a very, so it's just, I'm sorry, this is where it gets real serious part of the podcast. True story, when I was growing up, one of my best friends' name was Gary, and it was Garry. So it was just like yours, and a lot of people gave him crap for it. He maintained that was the right spelling of it. I saw your recent tweet about, look, Larry, Harry, both 2 R's. What happened with the name Gary, and how did it go to the 1 R? What happened?
That's what I'm saying, man. It's like almost every other Ari that you can think of has 2 R's. So how are we even going to argue that the 1 R spelling should be dominant for whatever reason? Like, sure, maybe many more people use it, but maybe they're wrong. Okay, there's a lot of people. Listen, when I think about the world, and I think about like how many people like I actually like in the world, usually it's a small percentage. How many people I actually appreciate opinions of in the world, probably even smaller percentage. So maybe because everybody thinks that's the correct spelling, it makes them even more wrong. But
yeah.
But I don't know, man. To me, I don't. The double R is the only thing that makes sense. But I understand where they're coming from. It makes, you know what? I'm happy that everybody doesn't have the double R spelling, because it just makes me more special than everybody else. That's all.
So true.
That's what my mom's been telling. That's what my mom's been telling me since I was a baby, and obviously it's true.
I love
my
it.
My mind is completely blown with the Harry Larry comparison. I've never considered this before.
Oh, yeah. It's a great argument. It's totally true.
Exactly. All right, so where are we at here? I mean, thank you so much for coming on. We got to get into some picks. You want to hang and talk UFC for a little bit, or what?
Yeah, we can. Let's do it. I mean, I'm not the best with that sort of stuff because I'm bad with names sometimes, like depending upon the situation.
You're just like us, and we're not very good at it either, and we do it every week.
Exactly.
I'll do the best.
All right, let's jump in, Phil. Let's close this out.
All right. So we're gonna start with obviously the main event. We got Steven Wonderboy Thompson taking on Showtime Pettis in the main event of this upcoming UFC fight card. You know, what do you make of this fight, and really, who do you got?
Okay, so this would be the one that I'm most educated on, so hopefully
Perfect.
I'll at least be able to talk to this one. So I would say, I'm just to start flat out, I'm going to go with Thompson as far as who's going to win. Not to take anything away, sorry, blanking.
Pettis.
Anthony Pettis.
Not taking anything away from Pettis. I'm a huge fan of his. Ever since I started watching MMA more to learn about MMA as opposed to just being a fan of it, like I said before, Pettis was one of the first people that I saw, and I was like, wow, like this guy, he's not just walking forward and throwing punches. Like this guy's got a plan. Like he knows what he's doing, you know. Oh, and obviously Thompson does too. But I'm simply saying, I'm not trying to take anything away from him because he is a very skilled striker. I think they're both very skilled strikers. The reason I give it to Thompson is because Thompson just has so much more. It's not because he's bigger. It's because of the range. He's got so much more range, and he knows how to keep that range. And I don't know. I just don't see Pettis being able to close on him in any way that's going to be dangerous to Thompson. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think they're both going to land a decent amount of strikes. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I'm really glad that it's happening. I'm going to give Thompson the edge on this one, just simply from that range perspective. He just does an excellent job of timing his shots from that distance, and it's really hard to deal with. I hear stories about him going up to Montreal to train with a lot of the pro guys, and he's given a lot of pro guys trouble. Even in coming into New York too, I've heard he's trained with a lot of guys. He's given a lot of those guys trouble. I don't have that background about Pettis. Like, I don't know. I've never heard of anybody training with him that I know of. But I don't know. From my basic knowledge, it's got to be Thompson.
And I would say the kind of fighters that have given Thompson problems in the past are guys who want to push him up against the cage, tire him out, wrestle him, don't let him get his distance. And I don't think that Pettis is going to be able to implement a game plan coming up from 155 to push Wonder Boy up against the cage and wear him out. So it'll probably be a pretty point fighting match on the feet. But I don't know if I like Pettis carrying all that extra weight. So I'm going to take Steven Wonder Boy Thompson, 4th round TKO.
Yeah, Gary, not to put you on the spot here, but how do you have it? So you've got Thompson. Do you think he gets the stop, or do you think it's a decision?
Oh, yeah, to be more specific, that's interesting.
Phil likes to make every opportunity to be wrong on our show, so
I apologize. It's true.
In a 5-round fight, that's tough. If it was a 3-round fight, I think it would go the distance for sure.
Yeah.
Just think they're both very skilled, and I think they'd be able. But that's a lot of damage to take over time. I have to agree with you. I think it ends in the 4th round, and yeah, probably TKO. I don't think it's going to be a clean KO. It could be, but I don't think it'll be a clean KO.
Yeah, I think it'll be an accumulation of strikes, and then Pettis will just be tired and probably end up just getting stopped.
Yeah.
I hate to just piggyback off what you said, but yeah, I'm going to agree with that.
Hey man, that makes me sound smarter. I'll take it.
We're doing the triple piggyback again for the 2nd time in the show. Apparently, I'm trying to make that a thing, so I have to agree. 4th round stoppage.
Oh,
Cool. So
you just completely disagreed just for the argument's sake, man. Come on.
It's called.
You gotta
Hey,
keep
it
it
should be
real, though,
called. It
because-
should be called the unanimous
You should've-
decision.
Knockout Pettis.
well, and then everybody will call me an idiot for picking Pettis though when he doesn't win. You know? All right. What was the second fight on the card?
Yeah. I don't want to go too far down, but
No. We'll just this one's easy.
Yeah. Gary,
Curtis Blades, a wrestler versus
Justin Willis versus Curtis Blades. Any thoughts on that one? Heavyweight fight.
Man, honestly,
He's busy. He's in camp.
don't know much about either.
Fair.
But I'm gonna go Curtis.
Yep, I'm going Curtis too. He's a monster. Willis is a little shorter. Don't think he's fought the kind of caliber opponents that Blades has. Blades had a really disappointing performance against Francis, and I think he's going to come out guns blazing to try and get his top 5 spot back. So I'm taking Blades for sure.
We're called the Split Decision Podcast, Gary, but as you can tell, it's a giant lie. It's more like the unanimous decision. I have to agree, unfortunately. I've also got Blades. But last question for me here. So the current featherweight champ is Martin Wen, and he has, as you know, I'm a big fan of nicknames. Yours, the Lion Killer, is one of my favorites. All respect to Martin, but the Situation is not my favorite nickname. It's just not. How can we make this fight happen? Let's make history right now on the Split Decision Podcast. How can we make this fight next after you go through England?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know if it will be. I'll say this: they were promoting one of my some of my fight footage by saying, "Yo, hey, when is Garry gonna get the shot at the title or whatever?" So, I mean, they're clearly thinking that direction. Unless it was just promotional material, who knows? I can't say for sure. They haven't communicated to me like whether or not. I would have imagined they would have talked to me already if they thought I was close to getting a title shot. But you never know. They've surprised people in the past. I mean, hell, all those signings that they did, like I didn't know that any of that was going to happen, and it just came out of the blue. Those 2 Grand Prix came out of nowhere that they threw, and obviously came along with the signings. So, I mean, anything can really happen in this organization at any time, I think. So, let's see it, man. You know, I think he's a really he's a good fighter. I admire the work that he's done. He's beaten some really tough guys. I think it'll make for a really good fight. I agree. I would have to agree with you on the nickname. I kind of think it's funny though, especially considering the organization. It's like this big Asian martial arts organization.
There's zero chance he thought of that on his own, though. Someone came up with that for him. I mean,
so Gary, I have to ask after that statement, would you consider taking a title fight in your 5th fight, potentially if it was offered to you, or would you want a little more of a build so that when you get there, you're 100% ready?
If it's up to me, I think I'd take it. But I don't. Every fight that I ever take, I always bring it to John first and see what he thinks, and see where his thoughts are. So I would say yes, but we'll see. If it is presented to me, I'd have to bring it to I think the only intelligent thing to do is bring it to my coaches, and he's had a lot more experience in the MMA world than I have. He may have other reasons why I shouldn't take a title fight right away. So I'm going to tell you from my perspective, yes, but maybe my coach would think differently. I'm not sure. I'd like to believe that he'd think that that would be fine, but who knows? Maybe he has other plans. I'm not really 100% sure, but I'd love to do it, man. I think I'm ready. I wouldn't have said that last fight, but I think I'm ready now. I mean, we'll see. I mean, maybe I get brutally KO'd this next fight, and then everybody will laugh at me for saying that, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, even if you were to take that title fight in your 5th fight, and let's say it might not have gone your way, you're still way young enough to bounce back and make another run anyway. So I would agree with you. I'd say if you had the opportunity in your 5th fight, I don't see how you could take it.
Fight Geek's very elderly, by the way. He's an old man, so.
I am an old man.
He's very old. We're both older than you. It's very. All
right, we got sidetracked again there, huh?
Okay. So, Fight Geek, what you got?
I'm call out one more fight on UFC Nashville.
Okay.
I'm going to butcher this name, but it's Davison Figueiredo versus, isn't it Jussier Formiga?
Yeah.
I know, those are names. It's a great fight, though. I got to call it out. It's going to be a great fight. So,
have never heard of either of them, but I'm gonna go with Formiga just because he seems like he has a Brazilian name, and that's it.
I'm gonna go with the other guy because he's a killer. He's amazing. Figueiredo. He's one of the top guys in that division right now. But Formiga's always been super duper tough. But I just know that's gonna be a high action fight, so I wanted to throw it out there for the listeners.
Yeah.
Sure.
I thought a lot about this, and I'm gonna go with. What was that?
I suck. Sorry. I said I very well may have seen one of them fight. Just suck. Like I literally watched fights sometimes. Names are just so bad for me.
Well, like you said, you're watching from like a strategic learning standpoint, where me and Phil got to talk about this stuff. So I got to learn everyone's name and know who they are and blah blah blah.
Well, I was gonna say that I'm gonna go with Formiga because I like Gary a lot more than you. So.
And we finally disagree. So
that's the problem.
Yeah, I have to disagree at some point, man.
All right.
Otherwise, you got to read the show.
Right?
All right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Gary, you're the
Phil,
man.
I got to ask you about this one. Sorry, I don't want to cut off, but Phil, what do you think about Luis Pena coming back? Remember, he was a big tough guy tough as in the Ultimate Fighter TV show.
Yeah.
Had a big rap, and then kind of fell flat in his first fight. What do you think, man?
Gary, have you seen this guy? This guy looks like, they call him Violent Bob Ross. He looks like that painter, the Bob Ross, like with the afro. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The red fro from the 70s.
I mean, if that's what he looks like, I'm a fan already.
I love it.
I hope he gets the title.
Yeah.
He's going for it. He missed weight last fight, though, and I think he's actually going down in weight. So I don't know what's going on with him, but he's definitely one to watch. I'm picking him to win this weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see.
Cool.
All right. We've any other questions for Gary?
No, man. Just want to wish him well on the trip. Thanks for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun. Welcome back anytime, and go over there and get that victory, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Gary. We truly cannot say thank you enough. It is our honor to have you as our very first guest. You've never had a guest before.
One more thing, though. Where can we watch you fight on March 31st?
Yeah. So I think that they have an app for One Championship called the One Super app that anybody can get in the App Store. And I've heard really good things. Like, it's super easy to navigate. You can watch all my previous fights, all my opponents' fights, pretty much anything that you need. You just, like, look people up by name. You can even, like, set alerts. So, like, you can, like, you can say, like, oh, let me know when Garry Tonon's fighting or whatever, and it'll give you, like, a countdown or whatever to whenever my fight is. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong about that last one.
Yeah, they have a follow fighter feature, which you can follow a fighter, and then anytime they fight or anytime news happens, it updates you on your phone. I've watched all 3 of your previous fights on the app, so very cool.
Awesome.
So that's the main one, and then I think they have a deal with TNT now, so I think TNT does a replay probably at nighttime at some point, but obviously the fight will be during the day because it's like a 12-hour time difference. So for most people, it's probably going to come on at like 5 a.m. or something like that. I can't say for sure, but it'll be at 5 a.m. on that app for sure. And then TNT, I'm guessing, wouldn't play it then. That would seem kind of weird.
I think I heard they're going to play it back at midnight, but that could be wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all right. Thank you so much, Gary. Cannot appreciate it enough. And just so you know, just hit me up. I will go to Jersey if you're talking to a girl at a bar, and I will introduce you, okay?
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. I need it.
I'm doing it. It's done. I agree.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, bro.
I'm going to go ahead and take us away then. You guys can find us every week on iTunes, Spotify, Soundcloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and Buzzsprout. I'm at The Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA Dude. We're at Split_podcast. That's 4 words, The Split Decision Podcast. You can find us, and thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Peace.
Thanks, Gary. You're the man.
Thanks, Gary, man.
Have a good one.
You too, brother.
Thanks, guys.